The crimson sky of Kepler 438b stretched endlessly above 16-year-old Milo Reeves as he dragged himself from the smoking wreckage of his escape pod. The acrid smell of burnt circuitry filled his nostrils, mixing with the strange, sweet scent of the alien atmosphere. His navigation system had malfunctioned during the solar storm, sending him spiraling away from the colonial transport ship and onto this uncharted world. "Hello." Milo called out, his voice cracking as the gravity, slightly heavier than Earth's, pulled at his limbs. "Anyone copy my signal?" Static answered from his damaged communication unit. The emergency beacon blinked weakly, its power cells nearly depleted. According to his handheld scanner, the atmosphere was breathable but contained trace elements his system couldn't identify. "Great," he muttered, pushing sandy brown hair from his eyes. "Just perfect." The landscape before him was desolate yet beautiful, rolling purple hills dotted with crystalline formations that caught the light of the distant sun, fracturing it into rainbows across the ground. Strange vegetation grew in spiraling patterns, following the path of the pale blue river that snaked through the valley below. Milo checked his survival pack, 3 days of emergency rations, a basic medkit, his multi-tool, and a thermal blanket. If the colonial transport had received his distress signal, rescue would come, eventually. Until then, he needed water and shelter. He'd barely walked half a kilometer when the ground beneath him trembled. Instinctively, he dove behind a large crystal formation, pressing his back against its cool surface. Voices drifted from beyond his hiding place, harsh, guttural sounds unlike any language he'd heard. "The crash site is empty," someone growled in accented standard English. "Fan out." The human couldn't have gone far. Milo's heart raced. Human smugglers. Pirates. Either way, their interest in him couldn't be good. "Check the crystalline outcroppings," ordered another voice. "These primitives always seek shelter." Footsteps approached, heavy and deliberate. Milo held his breath, calculating his chances of outrunning them in the unfamiliar terrain. 0. He was trapped. A shadow fell across him, and Milo looked up, expecting to see one of his pursuers. Instead, he found himself staring into the most remarkable eyes he'd ever seen, liquid silver irises ringed with iridescent violet, set in a face that was almost human yet unmistakably alien. She pressed a finger to her lips, a surprisingly human gesture. Her skin was the color of pale jade with intricate patterns swirling beneath its surface like living tattoos. Platinum hair, styled in an elaborate series of braids, framed her delicate features. "Don't move," she whispered, her voice melodic and strange. "The scavengers can sense fear." Before Milo could respond, she pulled a small device from her belt and activated it. A shimmering field enveloped them both, bending light around their bodies. Through the distortion of the camouflage field, Milo watched 3 hulking figures sweep past their hiding place. They were humanoid but massive, with thick ridged skin and faces dominated by broad, flat noses. Weapons that looked far too advanced for simple pirates hung at their sides. "Nothing here," one grunted, kicking at the crystal formation inches from where Milo and the strange woman hid. "Maybe the crash killed it." "Keep looking," the leader commanded. Juvenile humans fetched the highest price in the Orion markets. When they had passed, the woman deactivated the field. "Are you injured?" she asked, her eyes scanning him with clinical precision. "I'm fine," Milo replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "Who are you? What are those things?" "My name is Tessa," she said, the word sounding slightly different than a human would pronounce it, as though it contained notes his ears couldn't fully perceive. "Those are scavengers, criminals who traffic in rare species across the galactic rim." She stood, her movements fluid and graceful. She was tall, at least a head taller than Milo, and dressed in a form-fitting garment that resembled a flight suit, made of a material that seemed to shift colors with her movements. "We must reach the sanctuary before they bring reinforcements," she said, extending her hand. "Can you run?" Milo nodded, taking her hand. Her skin was cool to the touch, and he felt a slight tingling sensation where they connected. They moved swiftly through the alien landscape, Tessa guiding him along hidden paths and through narrow crevices in the crystal formations. Twice they froze as scavenger search parties passed nearby, but Tessa's knowledge of the terrain kept them hidden. As they ran, the living patterns beneath her skin pulsed with increased luminosity, creating mesmerizing waves of light that seemed to respond to her exertion or emotions. Milo couldn't tell which. "What are you?" he blurted out during a brief rest, immediately regretting his bluntness. Tessa smiled, revealing teeth that were perfectly straight and slightly pearlescent. "I am Stellari," she answered simply, as if that explained everything. When she saw his confusion, she added, "My people have lived on this world for millennia, long before yours discovered interstellar travel." "I didn't know this planet was inhabited," Milo admitted. "Our colony ships were headed for the Tau Ceti system. I got separated during the storm." "Your navigation charts would not show us," she replied. "We prefer it that way." They continued their journey as the crimson sky darkened to deep purple, stars emerging with startling clarity. Tessa led him to a cave entrance hidden behind a waterfall of shimmering, blue-tinted liquid. "The sanctuary," she explained. "The mineral content of the water disrupts their tracking technology." Inside, the cave opened into a surprisingly comfortable chamber lit by bioluminescent fungi. Tessa activated several small devices that emitted a soft hum and projected what appeared to be detection fields at the entrance. "We're safe here," she said, offering him a container of clear liquid. "Drink. It's purified." The water tasted sweeter than Earth's, with a subtle aftertaste that reminded Milo of honeysuckle. As he drank, he studied his rescuer with undisguised curiosity. "Why did you help me?" he asked finally. Tessa tilted her head, the gesture strangely bird-like. "Your kind is rare in this sector. The scavengers would have sold you to collectors or worse." "Thank you," Milo said sincerely. "I'd probably be dead without you." She reached out, her slender fingers brushing against his cheek in a gesture that seemed both clinical and oddly intimate. "You're very young," she observed. "Even for a human." "I'm 16, Milo replied defensively. "Almost 17. Something like amusement flickered in her silver eyes. "A child by both our people's standards." "I'm not a child," he protested, though sitting beside this enigmatic alien woman, he certainly felt like one. Tessa's living patterns shifted, creating a ripple effect across her visible skin that seemed to indicate she was processing something. "The rescue ships from your colony will come," she said finally. "My instruments detect their approach already, though they are still days away." Relief flooded through Milo, followed quickly by an unexpected pang of regret. "You'll help me signal them?" "Yes," she confirmed. "But you must promise something in return." "Anything," he agreed quickly. Her silver eyes locked with his, intense and unreadable. "When you're older, when you've become a man by your people's reckoning, return to this world." The request startled him. "Return? Why?" Tessa stood, the living patterns beneath her skin pulsing with what Milo somehow knew was significance. "My kind lives long by your standards. I will wait." "But why would you want me to come back?" he pressed, confused by her request. She smiled then, a genuine expression that transformed her alien features into something breathtakingly beautiful. "Because in saving your life, our fates have become intertwined by laws older than either of our civilizations. Such connections are rare and precious." Reaching up, she removed a small crystal pendant from around her neck and placed it in his palm. It was warm to the touch and seemed to pulse with inner light that matched the patterns on her skin. "Keep this," she said softly. "When you return as a man, it will lead you to me." Something in her voice made Milo's heart race. He closed his fingers around the crystal, feeling its gentle warmth spread up his arm. "I promise," he whispered, not fully understanding what he was agreeing to, but knowing with absolute certainty that he would keep this vow. As the first light of morning filtered through the crystalline formations outside their sanctuary, Milo couldn't help but wonder what awaited him when he returned to this strange world, and to the enigmatic woman who had saved him. 8 years had passed since Milo Reeves had last set foot on Kepler 438b. 8 years of obsession, preparation, and single-minded determination. The small transport vessel he'd purchased with his life savings hummed around him as it entered the planet's atmosphere, cutting through clouds the color of fire. "Beginning descent sequence," announced the ship's AI. "Atmospheric conditions stable. Local temperature, 32 degrees Celsius." Milo's fingers closed around the crystal pendant hanging from his neck. Even after all these years, it remained warm to the touch, pulsing with a faint inner light that had grown steadily stronger as he approached the planet. Tessa's parting gift had never left his person, not during his 4 years of xenobiology studies at the Academy, not during his 3 years of diplomatic service on the frontier worlds, not even during the dangerous year he'd spent training with the Colonial Rangers to prepare his body for this moment. At 24, Milo Reeves was no longer the frightened teenager who had crashed on this alien world. His once gangly frame had filled out with lean muscle, his boyish features hardened into the angular planes of adulthood. Only his eyes remained unchanged, still carrying the same wonder and determination that had driven him to return. Final approach to coordinates, the AI continued. "Warning, settlement detected. No record in Colonial Registry." "Override," Milo commanded. "Continue landing sequence." Through the viewport, he could see the landscape below had changed. Where once there had been only scattered crystal formations and spiraling vegetation, now stood elegant structures that seemed to grow organically from the terrain. They shimmered with the same iridescent quality as the patterns he remembered flowing beneath Tessa's skin. As the ship touched down on a flat expanse of purple soil, Milo performed a final equipment check. His adaptive exosuit would protect him from any environmental hazards, though his memory of the planet's atmosphere being breathable had proven correct. The universal translator at his throat had been updated with all known dialect fragments of the Stellari language, pitifully few, as they were one of the galaxy's most reclusive species. "You're being scanned," the AI warned as Milo approached the exit ramp. Multiple biosignatures detected approaching from the north. Milo took a deep breath, steadying himself. "Open the hatch." The crimson light of Kepler's sun washed over him as he stepped onto the planet's surface. The gravity tugged at him, slightly stronger than Earth's, exactly as he remembered. What he hadn't remembered, or perhaps hadn't noticed as a terrified teenager, was the subtle sweetness of the air, like honey and spice. A delegation approached from the direction of the settlement. 6 Stellari moved with that same fluid grace he remembered from Tessa, their jade skin adorned with pulsing patterns that seemed to communicate among themselves. They wore simple garments that shifted colors with their movements, and each carried a slender staff that hummed with energy. "Identify yourself, human," called the foremost figure in surprisingly good standard English. Milo raised his hands in the universal gesture of peace. "My name is Milo Reeves. I was here 8 years ago when my escape pod crashed. I was saved by one of your people, a woman named Tessa." The name created a visible reaction among the delegation, their skin patterns flashing in complex sequences. They conferred among themselves in their musical language before the leader addressed him again. "You speak of First Sentinel Tessandra," he said, studying Milo with newfound interest. "Few outsiders have met her, fewer still remember her name. First Sentinel." Tessa had risen in rank or importance since their meeting. The thought sent an unexpected thrill through Milo. "She asked me to return when I was older," Milo explained, touching the crystal at his neck. "She gave me this." The Stellari's silver eyes widened at the sight of the pendant. The patterns beneath his skin pulsed rapidly, and he turned to speak urgently to his companions. "The life bond crystal," he said finally, returning his attention to Milo. "You claim Tessandra gave this to you freely?" "Yes," Milo confirmed, confused by their reaction. "Is that significant?" The Stellari regarded him with newfound respect, or perhaps wariness. "I am Joriel, second sentinel of the Eastern Enclave. You will follow us to the settlement. The council must be informed of your arrival." As they walked toward the gleaming structures, Milo took the opportunity to learn what he could. I've studied your people as much as possible, but information is limited in our databases. As we prefer it, Jor-El replied, echoing Tessa's words from years ago. The galaxy's attention rarely benefits those who receive it. Yet you allowed me to land, Milo observed. Jor-El's patterns shifted in what Milo had come to recognize as amusement. Your vessel was being tracked the moment it entered our system. Had you not carried the life bond crystal, you would have found your ship's systems mysteriously malfunctioning, delivering you safely but far from our territories. The settlement was even more impressive up close. What had appeared to be simple buildings were actually complex living structures, grown rather than built, with crystalline elements that captured and redirected light in hypnotic patterns. Stellari moved among these structures, their skin patterns creating conversations visible to the eye but incomprehensible to Milo. They all stopped to watch the human visitor, their silver eyes curious but not hostile. Children, or what Milo assumed were children given their smaller stature, peered from doorways, their skin patterns simpler, less defined than the adults. At the center of the settlement stood a massive structure resembling a blooming flower, its petals formed of the same crystalline material as the formations in the wilderness. Jor-El led Milo toward this building. The council chamber, he explained. They are already gathering. Will Tessandra, be there? Milo asked, unable to keep the eagerness from his voice. The first sentinel has been notified of your arrival, Jor-El replied diplomatically. Inside the chamber, 9 elder Stellari sat in a semicircle, their skin adorned with the most complex patterns Milo had yet seen. Their silver eyes tracked his movement as Jor-El led him to the center of the room. Honored Council, Jor-El announced, I present Milo Reeves of Earth. He comes bearing the life bond crystal given to him by First Sentinel Tessandra 8 planetary cycles past. A murmur of musical voices filled the chamber, patterns flashing rapidly between the council members. The center figure, an elder whose jade skin had faded to a pale mint with age, raised a hand for silence. Show us this crystal, human, she commanded. Milo carefully removed the pendant and held it up. In the unique light of the chamber, it glowed more brightly than he had ever seen, pulsing in rhythm with the patterns that flowed across the council member's skin. It recognizes the collective, the elder observed. And it has been bonded to your essence. This is unprecedented. Before Milo could ask what that meant, the chamber doors opened. The Stellari Council members rose to their feet, their patterns synchronizing in what appeared to be formal recognition. Tessa entered the chamber. 8 years had made no discernible difference to her appearance. She moved with the same fluid grace, her platinum hair still elaborately braided, her jade skin still adorned with those mesmerizing living patterns. But her bearing had changed, she carried herself with authority and purpose that hadn't been present in the young woman who had saved him. Her silver eyes found his immediately, widening slightly in recognition. The patterns beneath her skin pulsed rapidly before settling into a steady rhythm. First Sentinel Tessandra, the elder greeted her. You recognize this human? Tessa approached, stopping just steps away from Milo. This close, he could see subtle differences, tiny lines at the corners of her eyes, a certain depth to her gaze that spoke of experiences lived in the intervening years. I recognize him, Elder Nairi, she replied, her melodic voice sending a shiver down Milo's spine. He has kept his promise. And grown into a man, the elder observed. As you specified in your invocation of the ancient rite. Milo found his voice at last. I came back, he said simply. As I promised. Tessa's lips curved into a smile that transformed her alien features. So you did, Milo Reeves. Her fingers reached out, stopping just short of touching the crystal he still held. And you've kept it safe. I never took it off, he admitted. The patterns beneath her skin pulsed with what he somehow knew was pleasure. The council must deliberate on this matter, Elder Nairi announced. It has been 17 generations since the ancient rite was invoked for an outsider, and never for a species so different. With respect, Elder, Tessa countered, her posture subtly shifting to one of challenge, the laws of life bonding are clear. I saved his life, he carries my crystal. He has returned as stipulated. The right of testing cannot be denied. Right of testing? Milo glanced between them, aware he was missing crucial context. The right cannot be denied, Elder Nairi agreed reluctantly, but the nature of the tests falls to council discretion. First Sentinel, you will escort your guest to the preparation chambers while we determine appropriate trials. Tessa bowed formally, then gestured for Milo to follow her. As they left the council chamber, Milo felt the stares of the Stellari elders boring into his back. What just happened in there? He asked when they were out of earshot. Tessa led him through a series of corridors that seemed to pulse with life. You've arrived at a complex moment in our history, Milo. Our people rarely interact with outsiders, and never in the way that you and I are about to. Which is how, exactly, he pressed. She stopped, turning to face him fully. When I saved your life from the scavengers, I invoked an ancient tradition among my people. When one Stellari saves another's life, they become connected, eligible for a bond deeper than what your language might call friendship or even partnership. Milo's heartbeat quickened. And you invoked this, for us? I did, she confirmed, her silver eyes searching his. Something in you called to me even then, young as you were. I needed to know if that connection was real, if it would endure as you grew into the person you were meant to become. And the crystal? He asked, touching the pendant. A physical manifestation of that potential bond, she explained. It has been absorbing your essence for 8 years, just as it contained a part of mine when I gave it to you. Milo processed this information, understanding dawning. So these tests will determine if you are worthy of joining with my people, she confirmed. With me. The implication staggered him. He had returned hoping to find her, drawn by a connection he couldn't explain, but this was far more profound than he had imagined. And if I fail? He asked quietly. Tessa's patterns dimmed slightly. Then you return to your people, the crystal remains dormant, and our connection fades. There would be no shame in it, the trials are difficult even for Stellari. And if I succeed? Her patterns brightened, shifting to a hue he hadn't seen before. That is a conversation for after the trials, Milo Reeves. She resumed walking, leading him deeper into the living structure. For now, rest. The first trial begins at dawn. Dawn on Kepler 438b was unlike anything on Earth. The crimson sun crept above the horizon, casting long shadows that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. Milo stood before the entrance to what the Stellari called the Chamber of Resonance, a massive structure carved into the heart of a crystalline mountain. Are you prepared? Tessa asked, her voice carrying that musical quality that had haunted Milo's dreams for 8 years. He nodded, trying to project confidence despite the anxiety churning in his stomach. The council had explained little about the trials he would face, only that they would test the very essence of his being, his compatibility not just with Tessa, but with the collective consciousness of the Stellari people. As ready as I'll ever be, he replied, adjusting the simple garment they had provided, a form-fitting bodysuit that changed color subtly with his movements, much like their own clothing. Tessa studied him, her silver eyes unreadable. The first trial is perhaps the most difficult, she admitted. It will test not your physical strength or intelligence, but something humans rarely share, your resonance. Resonance? The frequency of your thoughts, emotions, intentions, she explained. For my people, resonance is how we communicate beyond words, how we connect with each other and our world. The crystal at his neck pulsed warmly against his skin, as if responding to her words. The pendant, Milo realized. It's been attuning me to your resonance all these years. Tessa's patterns shifted in what he now recognized as approval. Yes. Without it, this trial would be impossible for any non-Stellari. 7 council members approached, Elder Nairi at their center. Behind them walked another Stellari male whose patterns pulsed with barely concealed hostility. This is Viridian, Elder Nairi introduced him. He will oversee the Chamber of Resonance for your trial. The male Stellari assessed Milo with undisguised contempt. "This is unprecedented," he stated flatly. "No outsider should attempt the sacred bonding trials." "Yet the ancient laws permit it," Tessa countered, her posture subtly shifting to one of challenge. Viridian's patterns flashed in what was clearly frustration. "Laws written before we knew other species existed. Yet laws we still honor," Elder Nairi interjected firmly. "Prepare the chamber." Viridian bowed stiffly and moved toward the massive crystalline doors. As he placed his hands upon them, the patterns beneath his skin flowed into the crystal structure, causing it to illuminate from within. Milo leaned closer to Tessa. "He doesn't seem thrilled about this." "Viridian represents a faction of our people who believe contact with other species weakens our collective," she explained quietly. "He is, traditionalist. And you?" Her silver eyes met his. "I believe strength comes from growth, and growth from change." She touched his arm briefly, sending a jolt of electricity through his system. "Be careful in there. Trust the crystal, trust what you feel." Before Milo could respond, the massive doors swung open, revealing a chamber that seemed impossibly vast for the mountain that contained it. Crystalline formations rose from floor to ceiling, each humming with a frequency just below audible threshold. The ground itself appeared to be liquid crystal, rippling with each step. "Enter," commanded Elder Nairi. "Once the trial begins, you must complete it alone." Milo squared his shoulders and stepped inside. The doors closed behind him with a resonant boom that seemed to vibrate through his entire being. For a moment, all was silent. Then, the crystals began to glow, each with a different hue and intensity. The liquid floor beneath his feet solidified, forming a path that branched in multiple directions. "Milo Reeves of Earth," announced a disembodied voice that seemed to come from the crystals themselves. "The Chamber of Resonance will test your compatibility with the Stellari collective consciousness. Choose your path." Milo studied the branching pathways. Nothing distinguished one from another, no signs, no markings, no obvious clues. He closed his eyes, focusing on the crystal pendant against his skin. Its warmth had intensified since he entered the chamber, pulsing with a rhythm that felt almost like a heartbeat. Following instinct, he chose the path to his right. As he walked, the crystals around him began to hum more loudly, their light intensifying. Images formed within them, memories, he realized. But not his own. He saw Tessa as a child, her skin patterns simpler, learning to channel her resonance into the living structures around her. He saw her training as a sentinel, defending her enclave from threats both natural and otherwise. He saw her discovering his crashed escape pod 8 years ago, her curiosity overriding caution. The crystal at his neck grew warmer with each vision, almost uncomfortably so. Milo realized what was happening. The pendant was trying to synchronize his resonance with Tessa's, using their shared connection to bridge the gap between their fundamentally different physiologies. He continued down the path until it split again. This time, he felt a subtle pull to the left, and followed it without hesitation. The humming of the crystals changed pitch, becoming more complex, harmonizing in ways that made his skin prickle with gooseflesh. New images appeared, not just Tessa's memories now, but glimpses of the collective Stellari consciousness. Centuries of history flashed before his eyes, the first growth of their living cities, conflicts with other species who sought to exploit their world's resources, the development of their technology that worked in harmony with Kepler's unique crystalline ecosystem rather than against it. Milo's head began to throb with the influx of information. The pendant grew hotter, and he felt something changing within him, as though new neural pathways were forming, allowing his human brain to process the alien resonance. The path split once more, this time into 3 branches. Milo hesitated, closing his eyes to focus on the crystal's guidance. This time, however, he felt conflicting pulls, one toward the center path, but also a subtler, discordant tug toward the right. Instinct warned him something was wrong. The dissonant pull didn't feel like the natural guidance of the crystal, but an artificial interference. Opening his eyes, Milo noticed something out of place, a small device embedded in the crystal wall near the right path, pulsing with an energy that didn't match the harmonious patterns around it. Sabotage, he whispered, remembering Viridian's hostile demeanor. Instead of choosing any of the three paths, Milo approached the device. It was well camouflaged, but now that he'd spotted it, he could see it was foreign to the chamber's design. Without hesitation, he pulled it from the wall. Immediately, the chamber's resonance clarified, the conflicting signals resolving into a single harmonious tone. The pendant cooled against his skin, pulsing in perfect rhythm with the surrounding crystals. The center path illuminated brightly, clearly marking the way forward. As Milo continued, the visions in the crystals changed again, now showing him his own memories, but from an outside perspective. He saw himself as the Stellari might see him, his determination to return to Kepler, his years of study and preparation, the longing he'd carried for a connection he barely understood. The path ended at a central platform where a large crystal formation rose from the floor, shaped like an open hand. In its palm floated a small crystalline object similar to his pendant, but unbound to any chain. "Place your crystal in the cradle," instructed the chamber's voice. Milo hesitated, reluctant to remove the pendant that had been his connection to Tessa for 8 years. But something told him this was the final step of the trial. Carefully, he lifted the chain over his head and placed his pendant in the crystalline hand. For a moment, nothing happened. Then both crystals began to glow with increasing intensity, their resonance building until the entire chamber vibrated with it. The pendant rose from the cradle, hovering in the air as the new crystal merged with it. There was a flash of light so bright Milo had to shield his eyes. When he looked again, his pendant had transformed. What had been a simple crystal was now more complex, with intricate patterns inside that pulsed with life, mirroring the living patterns beneath Stellari skin. "Take it," the chamber prompted. As his fingers closed around the transformed crystal, a jolt of energy surged through him. Suddenly, he could feel the resonance of the chamber, not just hear it, could sense the living harmony of the crystal formations around him, could almost perceive the thoughts and emotions of the Stellari beyond the chamber walls. Most distinctly, he felt Tessa, her concern for him, her hope, her connection to him that transcended physical attraction or simple affection. It was a resonance between their very essences, begun when she saved his life and nurtured by the crystal over 8 years. The massive doors swung open, revealing the Stellari Council and Tessa waiting anxiously. Elder Nairi stepped forward, her patterns shifting in surprise as she observed Milo. "The transformation has begun," she murmured. "Your resonance is changing." Tessa moved past her, approaching Milo with wonder in her silver eyes. "You succeeded," she said softly, reaching out to touch the transformed pendant. As her fingers brushed the crystal, their resonances synchronized visibly, her skin patterns and the crystal's inner light pulsing in perfect harmony. There was interference in the chamber, Milo reported, showing them the device he'd removed. Someone tried to alter the paths. Elder Nairi took the device, her patterns flashing with anger as she turned to Viridian. "Explain this." The male Stellari's patterns flickered with what might have been shame or defiance. The human should face the true test, not some watered-down version meant to accommodate his limited biology. "That was not your decision to make," Elder Nairi stated coldly. "You are removed from these proceedings." As 2 sentinels escorted Viridian away, Tessa turned back to Milo, her eyes shining with an emotion he could now almost feel through their growing resonance connection. "How did you know?" she asked. "The crystal's guidance felt wrong suddenly," Milo explained. "Like 2 different signals competing." He hesitated, then added, "And I could feel you through it." The real connection didn't match the false one. Tessa's patterns pulsed with a rhythm that synchronized with his heartbeat. "What else do you feel now?" Milo concentrated on the new sensations flooding through him. "Everything is more. I can sense the living structures around us, the crystalline formations in the mountain." His eyes met hers. "And you?" "Most clearly, I feel you." "The first trial is complete," announced Elder Nairi, her tone carrying a note of surprise. The human has not only succeeded but shows signs of adaptive resonance, something we believed impossible for non-stellari. The remaining council members conferred among themselves, their patterns creating complex conversations visible to the eye but still beyond Milo's comprehension. Rest, Elder Nairi finally instructed. The second trial begins at dusk. As the council departed, Tessa remained, standing close enough that Milo could feel the warmth radiating from her jade skin. "You've impressed them," she murmured. "That's not easily done." "And you?" Milo asked. "Have I impressed you?" Tessa's lips curved into a smile that sent a pulse through their growing resonance connection. "You impressed me 8 years ago with courage and quick thinking. Today you showed something more valuable, intuition and adaptation." Her fingers traced a pattern on his arm that left trails of sensation in their wake. "The man you've become is." She paused, searching for the word, extraordinary. The look in her silver eyes made Milo's breath catch. Whatever the next trial might bring, he knew with certainty that the connection forming between them was more profound than anything he had experienced. "I'll see you at dusk," he said simply. Tessa nodded, her expression both pleased and expectant. "Indeed you will, and then we'll discover how far your transformation can go." As Milo watched her graceful departure, he touched the transformed crystal at his neck, feeling the rhythmic pulse that now seemed synchronized with his own heartbeat. The first trial had changed him in ways he was only beginning to understand, opening channels of perception he hadn't known existed. Whatever came next, he knew he was no longer the same man who had landed on this planet just days ago. And somehow, that felt exactly right.